Hello, my name is Logan Julian, and I am a student at Mount San Antonio College. And in our research, we decided to study neuroticism and thriller-based media preference. Now, for neuroticism in this study, we are defining it as a person's propensity to feelings of anxiousness or negativity. So, highly neurotic individuals are going to be more likely to be anxious, tense, self-conscious, irritable. They're going to have less emotional stability, and they're going to be more vulnerable to depression on average. And also, we're going to be defining thriller-based media as any type of entertainment or art that can be described as a horror, erotic, crime thriller, mystery, or like a psychological thriller, and it's going to be emphasizing intensity or violence. Now, prior research involving specifically personality traits has found that what a person's key personality trait is going to highly affect them based on whatever the surrounding environment is. So that can be conscientiousness, that can be agreeableness, it can be extroversion. In this case, we're going to be doing neuroticism specifically, but whatever a key personality trait or traits people have, they are going to be more affected specifically based on that, on whatever environment they surround themselves with. It's also been found that people tend to enjoy media forms when it depicts an important personality trait of theirs. So if they are more agreeable, they tend to like to see agreeableness shown in media. Now, in terms of specifically neuroticism and thriller-based media, the research is a little conflicting. Some have found that a preference for thrillers does have a strong predictor of a higher neuroticism, while others found that thrillers actually just increase the anxiety even more for people with higher neuroticism, and that there is no link between the two. Now, the importance of these two is that individuals with high neuroticism tend to face many challenges with emotional regulation, and it does make them a little bit more vulnerable to stress anxiety. So it's important to try and find ways to help better regulate this for people that have higher neuroticism, and anything that can let them do it in a healthy, safe environment, such as consuming media in a very secure place where someone feels comfortable. It's also where people who do have a higher neuroticism, liking thriller-based media can be a better way, or not liking thriller-based media can be a good way of helping people understand a little bit better what our key personality traits says about what type of art forms we like to consume. With all of this, the hypothesis of this study is that as neuroticism increases, someone's preference for thriller-based media will also increase.
Methods and participants. Our total participants were 51 students that attended Fullerton College. These students took the course Intro to Psychology, thereby making our demographic questions gender, age, race, and ethnicity. For our gender, the majority was female, with 86.5% identifying as female and 7.7 as male, 5.8 as non-binary. For the majority of race and ethnicity, the participants identified as Hispanic, with the percentage being 69 and 17 for white. And as for the average of age was 25 for our participants. The sample was selected through an extra credit assignment that was given to the students by professors as incentives.
In this study, data were collected through an online survey administered via Google Forms. The survey, titled the Personality Survey, was designed to examine potential relationships between personality traits and media preferences. The survey began with an informed consent form, which provided participants of an overview of the study's purpose, emphasized the anonymity of their responses, and outlined their rights as participants. The full consent form is included in Appendix A. Participants then completed a demographic questionnaire which gathered general information such as age, gender, ethnicity, and average weekly media consumption. All demographic items were presented in multiple choice format and can be found in Appendix B. Following the demographics, participants were presented with instructions on how to complete the remaining sections of the survey. These instructions explained the use of a 5-point Likert scale ranging from 1 strongly disagree to 5 strongly agree to ensure consistent and accurate responses. The instructions are provided in Appendix C. Next, participants completed two primary questionnaires. The first was a neuroticism scale, adapted from the Big Five inventory. See Appendix D. This section included 30 items, including 10 reverse coded and 10 irrelevant items. A sample statement from this scale is, I often feel insecure about myself. The second questionnaire, developed by the research team, was titled Thriller Based Media Preferences. It also comprised 30 items with 10 reverse coded and 10 irrelevant items. An example item is, movies under the thriller category interest me more than most other categories. Both questionnaires employed the same 5-point Likert scale format. Upon completing the survey, participants were shown a debriefing statement, which clarified the true purpose of the study and the variable under investigation. See Appendix E. They were then directed to a participant verification page for optional extra credit submission to their instructor, as described in Appendix B. Overall, the material designed to be clear, ethnically sound, and consistent, allowing for the collection of reliable data on personality traits and media preferences.
Hello, my name is Mia Valenzuela, and I will be discussing the procedures portion of our method. Our online survey was distributed via email to professors. From there, the professors could decide whether or not they wanted their students to participate in the survey. Once taken to the survey, participants were given an informed consent, which they would read through, and at the bottom, they would check a box implying that they had given their informed consent. They were then prompted to answer some demographic questions regarding race, gender, and ethnicity, and then they were taken to a comprehensible or easy-to-understand instructions page, which they could read through prior to answering the survey questions themselves. After finishing the survey questions, the participants were taken to the debriefing page and finally were prompted to submit the survey. Once the survey was submitted, the students were provided a link to a Google Docs, which led to the participation verification page. From there, the participants could screenshot the participation verification page in order to redeem any extra credit if provided by the professor. The survey in total took about 15 minutes, but the participants weren't held to that time constraint and could take more time if needed. Once our data was completed, we then cleaned and coded it, so we reversed any inverted questions, removed any irrelevant questions, and during this time we would have also removed any missing or incomplete data. We did not have any missing or incomplete data to remove, so we then moved on to running our Pearson R. We ran our Pearson R in order to conclude that there was a correlation between neuroticism and thriller-based media.
Hi, my name is Carissa, and I'll be presenting the results section. The statistical test that we used was a Pearson R. Our test value was 0.116, our p-value was 0.208, and our effect size was 0.014. These values show that there was no significance between neuroticism and a preference for thriller-based media. The scatter plot on the right shows the relationship between a preference for thriller-based media and neuroticism in our study. There was no linearity, but there was homoscedasticity. This histogram shows the individual's neuroticism. We used a 1 to 5 Likert scale, with 1 being a low level of neuroticism and 5 being a high level of neuroticism. The mean was 3.03, the standard deviation was 0.965, and the Cronbach's alpha was 0.951. This histogram shows the individual's preference for thriller-based media. We also used a 1 to 5 Likert scale. 1 represents no preference for thriller-based media, while 5 represents a high preference for thriller-based media. The mean was 3.28, the standard deviation was 0.872, and the Cronbach's alpha was 0.928. The question set for neuroticism received a Cronbach's alpha of 0.951, and the question set for preference for thriller-based media received a Cronbach's alpha of 0.928. This shows that both sets of questions were reliable and valid. The degree of neuroticism received a minimum of 1.1 and a maximum of 4.8. The level of preference for thriller-based media for the minimum was a 1.4, and the maximum was 4.9. For our demographics in Figure 5, it shows the individual's gender. For our study, it was heavily skewed towards the female perspective because we had 86.3% of our participants identifying as female.
My name is Jose Triana, and I will be going over the discussion portion. First and foremost, the purpose for our study was to find if there was a correlation between neuroticism and a preference for thriller-based media. This ultimately led us to our hypothesis, which is that individuals with higher levels of neuroticism would show a greater preference for thriller media. Fortunately, after looking at the data that we collected, the hypothesis was not supported. Some of the background and supporting research that we looked at that led us to this hypothesis was research that showed that identifying with familiar traits in different media may help individuals with neuroticism regulate their emotions. There's also studies that showed that there was some type of a correlation between levels of neuroticism and thriller media, as well as other research that suggested that people with negative traits enjoy consuming media that reflects those traits in a controlled environment. Ultimately, this led us to our research project, and ultimately we were able to identify some of the limitations that may have led to us not having our findings supported. For example, we used convenience sampling, which limited our participation pool to just psychology students from a community college. Our sample size was relatively small with only 51 participants, which was demographically imbalanced, showing 86.3% of those female. Another interesting limitation that we were able to identify was that throughout the thriller media genre, there could have been different media or specific genre specific, like TVs, movies, books, etc. This may have diluted the responses that we received, as well as a possibility of being able to target specific thriller subgenres, like possibly psychological thriller versus horror versus others may have led to a more accurate representation. Future research recommendations would be to investigate if there is a relationship between media preferences and either positive or negative traits, taking a look at those specific subgenres like psychological thrillers, like horrors, like action thrillers, etc., and their effects on neurotic individuals over time, as well as different ways for us to be able to interpret those variables, to be able to correlate with neuroticism, as well as developing coping mechanisms using the data that is found by looking at correlations.
References. Here are the sources we used for our paper. All of them are peer-reviewed studies from psychology and social sciences journals. One important source I would like to highlight is from Psychology of Popular Media by Malonica, 2023, which really helped explain the connection between personality traits and entertainment preferences. Full references are on the slide for you to review. Lastly, thank you, and we hope you enjoyed our presentation.